if you're a single parent, except in the rare case where somebody forced themselves on you, you picked that person. And they may have disappeared and they've had nothing to do with this child, and you were overwhelmed by the responsibility, did the best you could, but you made a lot. Obviously, we all make mistakes.
In a previous video, I mentioned that in my Discord, there's a section for people to send me videos or topics they would like to see me cover. The latest of those recommendations was a video called Estrangement, What to Do When Your Kids Won't Talk to You by Weiss. And I'm going to be fully transparent with something before I get into the video itself. Here is all of the context I have for Weiss so far. He is a self-proclaimed trauma recovery and relationship life coach who teaches the 4 pillars of the authentic self cycle: truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness through the process of emotional authenticity. On his website, he talks about how he found his mother passed out from drinking when he was 12, and then he himself had to become the emotional adult. If you search him up on Reddit, however, the first thing that comes up is people who don't like him, saying that they suggest things like, if you are a victim of a narcissist, then you are one too. This one is the weird one for me. I spoke with this guy and he seems to have some issues with women in general. He ranted about his hatred of different women celebrities and the Me Too movement. Even though I did not bring up those subjects in our call, it was really out of left field. There's a decent amount of good info from this guy, but I've gotten turned off from him straight up making fun of people like HSPs. I'm gonna be so real, I don't know what an HSP is, I think. He took one researcher and used her as a representative of the whole group and just blamed her theory on her own trauma. I've heard him use childish voices to dramatically mimic those who disagree with him, and that's just immature. Weiss gives me the creeps. Classic abuser. Thank you. Really got that vibe from one video. And that's what I have so far. I think a fair criticism of these people, and I will lump myself in them, is that there is no training involved in any of this. Most of these people, like myself, are not psychiatrists, are not really experts in what it is that we talk about. A lot of what we do is talk about our feelings and things that we went through. The divide comes when you have people like me who are kind of like, damn, we're all kind of in this together. Sucks. Maybe be nice to each other. And you have people like estranged mom Diane and her husband Ted and Dr. Coleman and Dr. Phil and now possibly Weiss, where they have decided to not only share their opinion, but to find a way to monetize it. And that sometimes turns into, I am an expert of this. Here's my opinion, which feels more like me trying to state something I believe is fact. It can be, and again, I haven't watched this video. This is a general feeling towards some of these people. It can be aggressive and wrong and victim blamey. And that just sucks. It just sucks. And it's stupid to believe that we share the same feelings towards similar experiences as a whole. We don't. I could feel one way about something. You could feel entirely different. And we could still find some way to share in that. In the same way that I don't talk to either of my parents. I don't have the option to talk to one of them. Plenty of people in my situation would have gotten to my age and still found a way to have a connection with their mother. And I don't disagree with that. Problems arise when the difference in opinion is whether or not you were abused because one person doesn't consider slapping you across the face abuse. Differences in opinion, in air quotes, that are problematic arise when people like Dr. John ask a mother if she can honestly say she wasn't abusive. And she can say yes. And it stops there. If you ask my dad, who physically beat me, threw me, kicked my knees out, made me stand up, watched me fall, and when I couldn't stand up again, threw me across a room, did the same thing to my mother, went to prison for 5 years because of it, got out when I was 9, and then did it over again for 2 years before leaving. I think a lot of people, normal people, regular everyday people look at that and go, yeah, that was abusive. But if you ask him a million times, each and every one of those times, he's going to say, no, that was discipline. No, that wasn't abusive. Or I brought it on to myself as a child. And I'm not saying that in that particular instance, the woman that Dr. John was talking to was abusive. I'm saying that if you ask an abuser if they are abusive, they're probably going to say no. So when you say things, and not any of them specific, but them as a whole, when they say things like, the only good reason to cut off a parent is if there was physical abuse, but the people who perpetrated the physical abuse do not count it as physical abuse. So they're going to give you an option were you physically abused? And when you say yes, they're going to go, Nope, that doesn't count. If I can punch you in the face and you can get up before I count to 10, that's not abuse. It's only abuse if you get knocked out. I genuinely will never know if my parents actually don't think what they did was physical abuse, or if they're just like embarrassed about it, in denial. I won't ever know. Unfortunately, it's just not my business at this point, I guess. Like, I don't want to have that conversation, and they just deny it. But the point of that was to say that, one, there are plenty of reasons to cut off a parent, and they do not have to be abuse. And two, asking an abusive person if they were abusive is usually a no. I don't know that people who have been abused are surprised by that. If you're dealing with a person whose children has cut them off, there is more likely than not a good reason for that. And so many of these videos are just bad parents, neglectful parents, abusive parents, not always, but most of the time, validating each other. I wasn't neglectful, I was busy is something that you have to trust children will grow up and see. If you, as a parent, tried really, really, really hard, you actually did your best, your children will probably be able to notice that. No, she wasn't around. No, he didn't always buy me new clothes, but he tried. He worked 2 jobs to make sure that I was fed and had a roof over my head, and I'm very grateful. It's something that is much more common than a child growing up being like, damn, he didn't buy me a PS5, I won't talk to him ever again. But the way that these people talk, and I'm including Kenny, even though I don't know him, sorry. The way that these people talk just makes it sound like they never did anything wrong. They loved their children too hard and then pushed them towards a breakup. And it's always the word breakup. And it's just weird. I'm rambling. I'm sorry. It's been 20 minutes and I haven't really said anything. So for those of you who have not watched any of the in-between videos and are wondering where Toast is, my dog, she is having the time of her life in my sister's backyard while I visit my girlfriend for 2 months. And I'm only here for another 5 days. So I'm in my sad girl era while she's at work.
In today's video, I'm going to talk about something really difficult, estrangement, and what to do when your child doesn't want to have anything to do with you anymore, whether that's talking to you or seeing you or whatever it may be. And to do that, I'm going to get very vulnerable about my own life situation. And in my experience as a parent, I've had periods where all of my children I've been estranged from. Right now, there are 2 of them that don't want to have anything to do with me.
To people who are going to watch this for the first time, and this is your first video where you see me talking about something like this, it is your first time. You have no context. The context is, in so many of these videos with so many different parents, so many of them, really, so many of them, are in some sort of psychological or life coach role when I don't understand being one of their clients, looking at their lives and going, I would like to live that life. I wouldn't take advice on how to be a good parent from an estranged parent. I would listen to their story and try to avoid the things that they've done, but I wouldn't take positive advice. If they said something to me like, oh, I never spent any time at home, I would worry if I was spending enough time at home. If they said something like, you shouldn't take this time too seriously, they'll come back eventually, then I'm like, you have 2 kids right now that don't talk to you. I really don't want to be in that situation. I would rather not sit back and just say something like, they'll come back. They don't have another home. They don't have any other friends or family. Like, they have to come back. So they will. I unfortunately branch out too much when I say things. And so I say things like this. And I think of the multiple parents that we've seen say something like, I don't like that they have other friends or that they found family somewhere else. That's why they're leaving us, because they don't need us. Need is a whack word, because if I say something like people need good parents, I'll have 40 comments ago, I don't need parents. I also feel like I don't need parents. What I mean is that I do believe most people at some point who didn't have good parents wish that they did. Not that their parents are good parents, but that they had good parents in general. I don't think you need parents in terms of survival, but it would be nice to have had parents who tried their best and meant it, or loved you for the person that you are instead of the person that they wish you had been, regardless of whether or not they raised you to be that person. That's all that is.
I'm doing this because of what I believe in. What I really teach are truth and responsibility, and that requires being vulnerable and sharing truth and owning responsibility. Now, for some people, this is uncomfortable when I do this. They don't like me bringing up such personal information. One, they expect me or want me to be perfect and have everything figured out, and I can appreciate that. I'd like to be perfect too and have all the answers to everything. But I don't, and I think it's imperative for someone in my position to to be honest about that. That's one thing.
In Dr. Coleman's video, he stressed that you have to do whatever it is you have to do to get your child back. One of the things that he talked about often was whether or not you think you're wrong to pretend that you are in order to get your child back into your life. Lie to them, essentially. And I am getting similar vibes here. We haven't gotten there. I don't know. It is just the thoughts that I'm having and would like to share.
Some people don't like it because it means I might bring up other people involved in the situation and they don't think that's right. And I could see that. Again, my philosophy is truth and responsibility. And this is something I had to learn in my own journey, that, you know, when people would say things about me from my past that I didn't like, you know, my mentor taught me, well, wait a minute, Kenny, do you realize you're responsible? If you don't want people to know these things about you, you could have made a different choice. And so if the other people involved in my situations don't like that inadvertently their decisions might be discussed, well, they could have chosen a different choice. See, we're all responsible personally.
I think as adults, we realize that people are going to change. I still follow some of my high school friends or people that I knew in high school on Instagram or are friends with them on Facebook. And a lot of them are having kids. And in my head, I go, that person should not be a father. But I'm thinking of who they were 10 years ago. I would like to think that they've grown up and are entirely different people, regardless of the things that they did or said, or even I did or said back then. I've grown up so much in the last 3 years, and in the 3 years prior to that, and the 3 years prior to that. The person that I am now is entirely different than who I was when I was 16. But he's right in that you are responsible for those things. And now the thing is, how do we connect that to the parents? How do we get the parents to look at what they did to us as children, us, whether or not you're involved, sorry, as children, and go, you know what? I did do that, and I'm sorry. Instead of you know what? You were a difficult child. You cried every time I hit you. You know how much that sucked to deal with? I spent so much money on earplugs that I couldn't afford your medication. Whose fault is that? I'm gaslighting myself. The last time I had a conversation with my mother, it was my 19th birthday. I'm 28 and I'm gaslighting myself, dude.
The reason I do this is we all struggle because most teachers and the world in general advocates that we live in self-deception, blame, and projection. We put everything else on somebody else. We play the victim. That's how we're rewarded. We don't teach truth and responsibility, and there's a huge, and that's why everyone struggles. And so that's why I'm doing this, and you may disagree with all of those points, and I want you to disagree if you do. I want you to hold on to your reality and what works best for you.
None of that is contextualized. None of that is bleeding into any opinions we have. So I'm just nodding along. Like, we all have our beliefs, and if those are yours, cool, dude. I'm more worried about how they then come into the conversation of estranged children.
I'm just teaching from the platform that I've decided has the most people will benefit from, and it brings the most joy into people's lives. The other way doesn't work. And that's why I've chosen this. So it's what works for me. So if you are going through this and you're estranged from your child, it's been my experience, there are kind of three situations where this happens. There's the single parent who is just overwhelmed. There is the divorced or separated, the dissolved relationship. And usually, like, say you're the estranged one and you're blaming the other side. Or there is the intact relationship and there is blame going on about the other parent. In my experience, there are always subtleties, but it's generally these situations that's where the estrangement comes from.
I think he's the first person that didn't just bring up abuse as one. Like, these all seem not blameless, but like it is not necessarily the fault of the parent in any way. Like, overwhelmed single parent, divorced parent, parent who has the other parent speaking ill about them. I think if you were going to tell me that the parents categorize themselves somewhere in these three, like you said earlier, you should be able to take responsibility for things. But the majority of these parents, and again, I have to say this because I get too many comments, we are talking about the majority of these parents who have shown time and time again online that they cannot be trusted to be honest, that they were either verbally or physically abusive. Some of them turn into stalkers. Some of them refuse to leave their kids alone or to not talk about them, some of their entire personalities are just being estranged parents and trying to turn other parents against their children. If these don't apply to you, if you genuinely think you're a good parent and you're dealing with estrangement, this guy's videos probably aren't for you. You should probably look for a psychologist, and there are plenty on YouTube that look at why these things happen and try to help the children in ways that maybe you could as well. You should look for understanding in the side that you don't understand, not for validation. What was I saying? Okay, I think the parents that we've seen will gladly categorize themselves into one of these three categories, or like an offshoot of something like, we disagree politically, even though, you know, politics, right? And they'll do that so that they can avoid the first part of this guy's video, which was take responsibility. It's not my fault that their other parent talks about me in that way. Their other parent turned them against me, which could be true. But what happens if you learn that the other parent was telling the truth about this parent? If I'm divorced and I refuse to visit my children, you can drop them off if you want. They know where I live, which we've also seen. And the other parent is telling their kids, daddy doesn't want to pick you up. Is that a mean thing to say? Yes. Can it turn those kids away from the dad? Yes. Is that the dad's fault? Yes. Do you see how like people can categorize themselves within these categories while also still being the person at fault? There are things that I speak about a lot less that I am a little bit more empathetic towards than I think about. People who are single parents and turn to drugs or alcohol and it just gets out of hand. That's just a bad situation to be in for everyone. And I understand why the kids are estranged in that situation, but it does suck. And that's not something I have to deal with. And it's not something that I talk about too much. But there are plenty of times in my life, and I don't have to deal with children. There are plenty of times in my life where I wish I drank alcohol, or I wish I did drugs, or I wish I smoked something just to feel a little better. And knowing who I am, knowing everything about myself, if I tried one thing and I liked it, I wouldn't stop doing it. Which is why I don't do anything in the first place. But I could very easily fall into a situation like that, I think. And having kids would not make it any better. If you're wondering why I don't do these videos anymore, I've been recording for 45 minutes and we are 3 minutes into the video and I just take too long. I take too long.
And what I've noticed is the primary problem is the blaming of the other parent. Now, I'm not going to deny that the other parent isn't a problem, but there's some fundamental truths we must take responsibility for.
I hope that in this video, Kenny, I'm just going to call him Kenny, tells us why he's estranged. I'm much more interested in what you have going on than these ideas that we've talked about so many times and we'll talk circles around. On the other side of blaming the parent that I didn't mention earlier, you have things like she, he, they wanted the divorce. They split our family apart. It's their fault. When the divorce was really the right thing to do for your family. And so there are plenty of times when just things like that are too muddied and you should really just focus on your relationship with your children.
That then put the responsibility back on us, and this is why we are estranged. We are not taking responsibility for our part. Not enough. We may say...
His mic is clipping a little bit, so that is him. Sorry if you're wearing headphones and hear that like click. It's him, all right?
Yeah, I take responsibility, Kenny. But you're estranged because you haven't taken enough responsibility, okay? And that's just tough to say. Like, this is going to be a tough video for you because truth is difficult to absorb when you have a world advocating the opposite. And responsibility is difficult to absorb when we haven't been shown how. But I'm really encouraging you to stick with me till the end. And that's also why I'm going to use my story, because when you see that it's possible, it gives you hope. And that's really what I want you to get from this video is hope.
I have a question for the estranged children. If you're estranged from one of your parents and you knew completely that they had changed from the person that they were, that if you started a relationship with them now, it would go well. Maybe it wouldn't be the best. There's obviously going to be that little scent of, I don't like this, I'm scared, whatever. But if you knew you could have a good relationship with one of your parents from now until however long they live, would you take it? The older I've gotten, the closer I've gotten to my 30s, my sister talks about her relationship with our mom having evolved. The more she talks about our mom having chilled out and become completely different. And there are still like issues that are remnants of like the ones that I had as a child with her. I don't want it. I don't think I could handle it. I personally don't enjoy having a lot of relationships in my life anyway. Like, I love my partner. I have a few friends. I talk to my sister sometimes, and that is more than enough. I don't feel like I have the energy or the time to have more people than I already do. And so it's not something that I think about too much, but it's something that I'm thinking about now. I will say no. If I knew that the person my mother is now was entirely different than the person she was when I was 14, and we could have a good relationship for the rest of her life or my life, I still think I'd say no. I think it would be too exhausting and also just awkward. Like, imagine all the things I've told Lee about growing up, right? And now I'm like, you're meeting my mom. Surprise, you do have to share holidays.
Not judgment, not blame or criticism. What I'm really teaching in this video is tremendous hope and tremendous opportunity. Now, to get there, to live in that hope and live in that opportunity, we are going to have to go headfirst into some really dark, difficult truths and responsibilities which create feelings we're not used to navigating.
He gives me my truths are our truths vibes. He gives me my experience is our experience because I feel this way. You should feel this way. And if you don't, you're wrong. You'll get there one day vibes.
And this is, the deep granularity of emotional mastery, which I'm trying to impart. And that's why I'm doing this. So do you see the overwhelming responsibility? If you're a single parent, except in the rare case where somebody forced themselves on you, you picked that person. And they may have disappeared and they've had nothing to do with this child. And you were overwhelmed by the responsibility, did the best you could, but you made a lot. Obviously, we all make mistakes, and your child's estranged from you. Part of the problem is the other parent was never there. You're not responsible for that.
I should probably let him talk a little bit more before I comment on this. But one, very victim blamey. Two, you don't know the circumstance, dog. I've said it in so many different videos. People who are going to cheat on you probably don't give you a warning. People have turned physically abusive after relationships. Sometimes the best thing to do is to get your child out of that situation. Maybe they died. Maybe you're a single parent because your spouse died. You generally cannot chalk you're a single parent because up to whatever it is, it's your fault. I know it's a lot more about the way it's being said, but I think that words matter a lot. And I don't think that I'm ready to just sit back and listen to someone that's like, single parent, unless you got assaulted, your fault. Okay, let's start there. You could have just been like, single parent, all right, let's see what we can do with this. Not single parent, your fault. Your fault. They died, your fault. You chose that person. You chose that person who was only going to live to 24. Your fault. Your fault. How'd they die? They got ran over? Okay, what were you driving? Sorry, it's, what a moment I just had.
And you are responsible for picking and conceiving a child with somebody that would not be around. I know you're thinking, well, I didn't know that would happen, and that's true. But do you see why that's true? Because we didn't take responsibility to learn how relationships happen, how attractions happen. We are responsible. We can't outrun those truths.
That was so stupid. That was so stupid. Completely aside from like any estranged stuff, chill. Chill, 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 chill. Maybe this is a moment, maybe this is a thought you have when you're 12, when you're growing up in a single parent household and you say something like, oh, mom cheated on you, that's why you left? Well, if my spouse cheated on me, I'd just work through it. Or I would not, marry someone or have a child with someone who was going to cheat on me. Maybe that's an initial thought you have as a child, but you grow up and you realize that people are too complicated for that. And now I'm thinking that he did something that made the other person a single parent. And he's like, well, it's her fault too. She had kids with me. She knew that I was going to whatever. She knew that I was going to go to work every day at 8 a.m. and leave you alone in bed. That's cheating. This is about my girlfriend now. Why can't you just hang out all day?
And so if we are the sole parent, we have to take ownership. I played a huge part in picking a partner that would end up forcing me to raise this child on my own. That's me.
Brother, what's happening with your pinky? I have 3 fingers that are like bent. It's these 3. I don't know if you can tell. Because of football in high school.
That's a lot of me.
You're just not going to convince me you are right in this situation. Absolutely not, dude. On the other side, I get it. I understand being like, I'm a single parent because I cheated on them. I'm a single parent because I was abusive. I'm a single parent because I could not handle doing my part in this relationship. I 100% get that part of taking responsibility. Nah, I'm a single parent because we spent our lives growing up together. At 14, we decided we were going to get married. At 24, we got married. At 25, we had our first child. And at 28, they decided it just wasn't for them. They left. A very extreme example, but I just do not enjoy how victim blaming that was 6 minutes in.
Same holds true if you have, a relationship that's ended. And this other one is really toxic. And I would agree, they're probably 1,000 times more imperfect than you and more destructive than you. But the lack of recognition that if they are that destructive, that's a mirror into how dysfunctional my views of relationships and attraction are. That I picked that and was attracted and allowed that near me. And again, I didn't take responsibility to go learn about attraction, go learn about relationships. To learn that we become our childhood. That's why we picked this. I didn't know that. Like there's all these things. I'm responsible for that. That's truth. I have to let that in.
You have to believe that your children are smart enough to understand as adults what may have happened to them as children. Not always why, and not always to the point of forgiveness, but understanding that sometimes things really are out of your control. My father was very, very physically abusive towards me and my mother. Never in those situations or remembering them have I blamed my mother for them. I blame my mother for the things that she did. And for her to one day go, you know what? It was my fault. I chose to be with your father. That's on me. My bad, G. Would change nothing. What? Like, I'm not blaming her. Should she have chosen a better partner? Sure. I guess. But I don't know what he was like. I don't know what he was like when they met. Maybe he was the nicest person. Maybe over and over, he made promises to her that he didn't keep. And I'm supposed to blame her for what? For believing him? That's not her fault. This is just a weird point to make.
That's truth. I have to let that in. Or number 3, that I'm in a relationship. And maybe both of us are just completely astonished that our child or children don't want to have anything to do with us. And if that's the case, there is a level of detachment from truth and reality that is so far beyond comprehension. Those are 2 parents that must see themselves as gods because they can't see that they're imperfect and they can't even acknowledge and admit their mistakes, or they may say they haven't, but they aren't that big of a deal. They're minimizing them.
I think that if you're dealing with people who are sociopathic, narcissistic in that way, it's so beyond trying to reason it that you just don't. The next step is to have those parents that are like, you know what, I wasn't perfect, but I would have never cut off my own parents. You threw me across a room, dude. I would never do that to my children. I don't even have kids.
This is really hard to say. And I'm doing my best to be really kind and empathetic about this. And I know I'm not going to do this as well as I would like. It's tough to say truth from a place that doesn't hurt. And that's what I'm trying to do here.
If you being honest with your mistakes doesn't hurt, then I don't think you're being honest enough. It should hurt to be sorry, right? All the mistakes I've made that affected other people, when I look at them and I apologize, I mean it and it hurts me. I'm not making it about myself, but it does. It hurts to have hurt someone else. It hurts to have been a bad person. It hurts to, even on my best days, my best intentions, to have made somebody feel bad. I don't want an hour-long lecture on apologies and about mistakes if it doesn't hurt you to talk about it.
Do you realize if a child runs away, what that says? That the one place where they are supposed to have complete safety, the home, their mother and father, they deem that so unsafe that they leave it.
That is something that has been brought up over and over again by the estranged children, their comments, and my comments. And it is not something that I've seen any of these parents, even in trying to just figure out what's going on, bring up at all. People find the ability to leave and feeling unsafe or feeling safer somewhere else. And so sometimes we've heard these people bring up the politics talk, right? And it'll boil down to something like, I don't believe in their right to exist. And they left? Damn. Why would they do that? I've unfortunately been recording for a long time, and I do have something that came up, so I'm going to have to call it there. We only made it through 8 minutes of 32, so this is going to be segmented and probably the next couple of videos. This one should be out Friday the 14th, as long as I get to edit everything on time. But I do have to call it there because I do unfortunately have to go. I'm going to believe in this man's ability to sit down and tell me his story in a way that makes me learn something, in a way that forces me to sit back and go, okay, I didn't think of that. And maybe I'm wrong, but I hope I'm not. So sorry if you had to sit through 6 minutes of being gaslit, which is what that felt like. I'm going to call it there. Thank you all for spending time with me. It's my favorite thing to do. You're my favorite people to deal with. Sorry if you're crying. I cried a little bit earlier. Don't cry. Stop. I'll give you something to cry about. Damn, you were supposed to love me. And for your 14th birthday, Max, with all the love I have for you, this is all in Spanish, by the way, neither of my parents spoke English, I'm going to give you something to cry about. No, I was too big at that point. I was 99 pounds. Just massive, all muscle. All right, get out of here. Go, go, go. Just get away from me. Goodbye.